Did you know that ancient Egypt and Judaism have surprising connections? This video explores the unexpected parallels between these two civilizations, revealing how they influenced each other in ways you might never have imagined. You've probably heard that Judaism and ancient Egypt were completely separate, but what if we told you they shared more than you think? This video dives into the unexpected connections between these ancient cultures, challenging common misconceptions and revealing hidden truths. Get ready to have your understanding of ancient history turned upside down. In this video, we uncover fascinating evidence of a complex relationship between Judaism and ancient Egypt. Discover how these two civilizations influenced each other's religious practices, cultural beliefs, and even their historical narratives. When most people think about ancient Egypt, images of the pyramids, pharaohs, and mummies probably come to mind. But did you know that ancient Egypt may have had a connection to Judaism? That's right. There is a shocking link between these two ancient cultures that you probably never knew about. Keep watching to find out more. We will be taking a deep dive into the history books to uncover the truth behind this mysterious relationship. So make sure to stay tuned until the end of this video. If you don't, you won't want to miss any of the fascinating details we have in store for you. So let's get started. But before we dive in, be sure to hit that like button if you're interested in learning more about ancient Egypt and Judaism. We've got some really interesting stuff to share with you. One of the most surprising connections between Judaism and ancient Egypt is their shared geographical location. Ancient Egypt was situated in the northeastern corner of Africa along the banks of the Nile River, while the land of the early Hebrews was located just across the Red Sea in the Middle East. Now, this may not seem like much of a connection at first, but when you consider the fact that these two cultures were separated by thousands of miles and existed during different time periods, it becomes clear that there must have been some kind of contact between them for this relationship to have developed. In fact, archaeological evidence has shown that there were trade routes between ancient Egypt and the Middle East as far back as 3000 BCE. These trade routes would have allowed for the exchange of goods and ideas between the two cultures, which could have led to the adoption of certain religious practices and beliefs. For example, the early Hebrews may have been exposed to Egyptian gods such as Ra, the sun god, or Osiris, the god of the dead, through their interactions with Egyptian merchants and traders. Similarly, Egyptians may have learned about the Hebrew god Yahweh through stories brought back by travelers who had journeyed to the Middle East. This exchange of religious ideas was likely facilitated by the fact that both cultures were polytheistic, meaning that they believed in multiple gods. This made it easier for them to incorporate each other's gods into their own belief systems. But the connection between ancient Egypt and Judaism doesn't stop there. In fact, there is evidence that the Israelites may have even lived in Egypt at one point. According to the Bible, the Israelites traveled to Egypt in search of food during a famine in the land of Canaan. They ended up staying in Egypt for 400 years, during which time they became enslaved by the Egyptians. Eventually, Moses led the Israelites out of slavery, and they fled to the wilderness, where they wandered for 40 years before finally entering the Promised Land. While this story is often interpreted as a purely religious one, it also has historical significance. The fact that the Israelites lived in Egypt would have given them direct access to Egyptian culture, allowing them to learn from and interact with the Egyptians firsthand. This could have had a profound impact on the development of early Israelite society. Now let's take a closer look at the possible connections between ancient Egypt and Judaism. One of the most intriguing aspects of ancient Egypt is its rich mythology and religious beliefs. As we mentioned earlier, the Egyptians worshipped multiple gods and goddesses, each representing different aspects of nature and human life. Some of their most well-known deities include Ra, the sun god, Osiris, the god of the dead, and Anubis, the jackal-headed god who guided souls in the afterlife. What's interesting here is that some of these Egyptian gods bear striking similarities to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who later became known as Yahweh. For example, both Ra and Yahweh are considered to be supreme creators. In Egyptian mythology, Ra was believed to have created the world and all of its inhabitants. Similarly, in the Hebrew Bible, Yahweh is described as the one who created the heavens and the earth. This shared role of creation suggests a possible link between the two cultures and their respective beliefs. Another similarity between Egyptian and Jewish religion can be found in their views on the afterlife. Both cultures believed in an afterlife, and the Egyptians' elaborate burial rituals and beliefs about the underworld show a clear influence on the development of Jewish eschatology. For example, the Egyptians' belief in the judgment of the dead and the weighing of the heart against the feather of justice is strikingly similar to the Book of the Dead in the Hebrew Bible, which describes a similar process. This shared belief in an afterlife and the importance of maintaining purity of the body and soul suggests a strong connection between the two religions. Moving on, let's talk about the impact of ancient Egyptian culture on early Hebrew society. As we mentioned earlier, the Hebrews likely had regular contact with the Egyptians through trade routes and personal interactions. This contact would have exposed the Hebrews to many aspects of Egyptian culture, including their art, architecture, and customs. For example, the pillars and columns of Solomon's temple, which were decorated with intricate carvings, bear a striking resemblance to those found in Egyptian temples. This suggests that the builders of Solomon's temple may have been directly influenced by Egyptian architectural styles, which were widely known throughout the Middle East at the time. The use of hieroglyphics is another area where Egyptian influence can be seen in early Hebrew society. While hieroglyphics were primarily used in Egypt, the practice of using symbols to represent words and sounds spread to other cultures in the Middle East, including the Hebrews. This is evidenced by the discovery of ancient Hebrew texts that contain hieroglyphic inscriptions. The use of hieroglyphics by the Hebrews may have been influenced by their contact with the Egyptians, who were masters of this form of writing. Finally, the Exodus story itself contains elements that suggest an Egyptian influence. The story of Moses leading the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt is one of the most important events in Jewish history. However, some scholars believe that the story of the Exodus may have been influenced by Egyptian traditions. For example, the story of Moses rising from the Pharaoh's daughter as his own son, and later delivering the Israelites from slavery, bears similarities to the Egyptian legend of Moses. In this legend, Moses is said to have been raised in the Egyptian royal court and eventually led the Egyptians out of slavery under the Pharaoh Akhenaten. Although this version of the Exodus story is not widely accepted among biblical scholars, it nonetheless shows that Egyptian culture and traditions may have played a role in shaping the way the story was transmitted and interpreted over time. While the connections between ancient Egypt and Judaism are intriguing, it's important to note that there is no consensus among historians and archaeologists about the extent of their relationship. Some argue that the similarities between the two cultures are merely coincidental, while others believe that there was a genuine exchange of ideas and beliefs between them. Regardless of the true nature of their connection, the similarities between ancient Egypt and Judaism are undeniable and provide a fascinating glimpse into the cultural and religious landscape of the ancient world. Did ancient Egypt influence the Bible? Could there be a connection between the pyramids and the prophets? And if so, what does it mean for our understanding of early Israel's foundational stories? That's what we're going to explore today. It's me, and this is my channel. So we've just looked at some possible Mesopotamian influences on the Genesis creation account. You can check out that video right here if you missed it. But now, let's turn our attention to another major ancient civilization, ancient Egypt. When most people think of Egypt, they usually think of the pharaohs and the pyramids and the riches of the new kingdom and the glories of its queens, like Hatshepsut. But Egypt had a rich history spanning over 3,000 years, from the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt around 3100 BCE until the Greek conquest of 332 BCE, and it was the longest lasting of the ancient Near Eastern civilizations. The Egyptians had developed a writing system by around 3200 BCE and left behind countless documents that tell us about their religion, their culture, their politics, and their daily life. This is why scholars know so much about ancient Egypt compared to other contemporary cultures. It's also why we have a lot of material to work with when trying to answer the question, did ancient Egypt influence the Bible? In fact, many scholars believe that Egypt had a significant influence on the religious beliefs and practices of early Israel, and one of the key pieces of evidence they point to is something called the 42 Negative Confessions, which are a set of 42 ethical and legal guidelines that were designed to ensure that the deceased person did not commit any sins during their life. These confessions were a central part of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which was a collection of funerary texts that were intended to help the deceased person navigate the afterlife. In order to understand how these 42 negative confessions might have influenced the Ten Commandments, let's take a closer look at each one. Remember, these are things that the deceased has to confess he or she has not done in order to go to heaven. So number 1 says, I have not committed sin with my tongue. Well, this is similar to Exodus 27, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test as you did in Egypt. Number 2 says, I have not robbed, which is similar to Exodus 20:15, you shall not steal. Number 3, I have not struck, which is similar to Exodus 20:13, you shall not murder. Number 4, I have not acted arrogantly, which could be related to Exodus 20:3, you shall have no other gods before me. Number 5, I have not committed adultery, which is obviously similar to Exodus 20:14, you shall not commit adultery. Number 6, I have not been greedy, which is related to Exodus 20:17, you shall not covet. Number 7, I have not uttered lies, which is similar to Exodus 20:16, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Number 8, I have not transgressed boundaries, which is difficult to find a clear parallel for in the Ten Commandments. However, it could be related to Exodus 20:23, you shall not worship them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Number 9, I have not committed impurity, which doesn't have a clear parallel in the Ten Commandments. Number 10, I have not caused an abortion, which doesn't have a clear parallel in the Ten Commandments. Number 11, I have not been a tyrant, which is similar to Exodus 20:18, you shall not make any idols. Number 12, I have not oppressed the weak, which is similar to Exodus 22:21, you shall not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you were foreigners in the land of Egypt. Number 13, I have not caused a stumble, which is similar to Deuteronomy 27:19. Cursed is he who distorts the words of this law, to set the people aside from following the Lord, our God, for to their own gods he has caused them to stray. Number 14, I have not done violence, which is similar to Exodus 20:13, you shall not murder. Number 15, I have not behaved corruptly, which is similar to Deuteronomy 27:20, cursed is he who does corruptly, and he who is not upright among you. Number 16, I have not acted deceitfully, which is similar to Exodus 20:16, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Number 17, I have not caused strife, which is difficult to find a clear parallel for in the Ten Commandments. Number 18, I have not hated, which is difficult to find a clear parallel for in the Ten Commandments. Number 19, I have not been envious, which is similar to Exodus 20:17, you shall not covet. Number 20, I have not rejoiced in his falsehood, which is difficult to find a clear parallel for in the Ten Commandments. Number 21, I have not sinned with a minor, which is similar to Deuteronomy 22:28. If a man finds a betrothed virgin in the fields, and the man who is not her husband ravishes her, then both the man who lay with her and the girl who prostituted herself shall die. You shall have no pity, your blood is upon you. Number 22, I have not shed blood, which is similar to Exodus 20:13, you shall not murder. Number 23, I have not made a woman barren, which is similar to Exodus 23:26. If a man curses his father or his mother, his punishment shall be in the days of his youth according to his offense, for he has cursed his father. And because he has cursed his mother, his punishment shall be in the sight of his people, at the mouth of his elders. He shall be brought to justice. Number 24, I have not allowed a beast to have sexual intercourse with another beast, which is similar to Exodus 22:18, you shall not allow a witch to live. Number 25, I have not been lustful, which is similar to Exodus 20:14, you shall not commit adultery. Number 26, I have not uttered abusive language, which is similar to Exodus 27, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Number 27, I have not wished for his bread, which is similar to Exodus 20:17, you shall not covet. Number 28, I have not wronged any person in his property, which is similar to Exodus 20:15, you shall not steal. Number 29, I have not treated lightly those who trust me, which is similar to Exodus 20:16, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Number 30, I have not plotted evil, which is similar to Exodus 20:12, honor your father and your mother. Number 31, I have not struck my father, which is similar to Exodus 20:12, honor your father and your mother. Number 32, I have not struck my mother, which is similar to Exodus 20:12, honor your father and your mother. Number 33, I have not spoken abusive language, which is similar to Exodus 27, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Number 34, I have not exalted myself, which is similar to Exodus 23, you shall have no other gods before me. Number 35, I have not been intoxicated, which is similar to Leviticus 10:9. And the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron, you shall have no wine nor strong drink nor any means of intoxication, you nor your sons with you when you come into the tent of meeting, lest you die. Number 36, I have not sinned with the wife of a man, which is similar to Exodus 20:14, you shall not commit adultery. Number 37, I have not coveted his property, which is similar to Exodus 20:17, you shall not covet. Number 38, I have not committed perjury, which is similar to Exodus 20:16, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Number 39, I have not committed immorality, which is similar to Leviticus 18:6. None of you shall approach any blood relative to commit immorality. Number 40, I have not wickedly abused children, which is similar to Deuteronomy 22:28. If a man finds a betrothed virgin in the fields, and the man who is not her husband ravishes her, then both the man who lay with her and the girl who prostituted herself shall die. You shall have no pity, your blood is upon you. Number 41, I have not oppressed the poor, which is similar to Exodus 22:22. He shall have no interest or increase, but he shall live off his wages. Thus you may live in the land of your people. And finally, number 42, I have not done any of these things, which ties everything together. As you can see, many of these 42 negative confessions have striking similarities to the Ten Commandments. And it's hard to argue that the Egyptians didn't have a profound influence on the development of Hebrew law and ethics. But wait a minute, wasn't the Torah given to Moses on Mount Sinai? How could Egyptian ideas possibly have influenced it? Well, it's important to remember that the process of receiving the law was not a one-time event, but rather a gradual revelation that took place over a period of time. The core of the Torah, including the Ten Commandments, was given in its final form during Moses' lifetime, but the rest of the material was written down later by Moses and others. It's likely that this material included older traditions and stories that had been passed down orally for generations. And it's possible that some of these traditions had been influenced by neighboring cultures, including Egypt. Now, this isn't to say that the Torah is full of Egyptian ideas, but rather that some of the laws and teachings may have been shaped by the cultural context in which they arose. For example, the Egyptians had a well-developed sense of justice, and they had established legal principles that were designed to protect the rights of the weak and vulnerable. They also had a strong emphasis on family values, and they had laws that were designed to maintain social order and stability. These ideas may have been transmitted to the Israelites through various means, such as trade, diplomacy, or personal contact. Now, the Israelites weren't the only ones who were influenced by Egyptian culture. In fact, many other ancient Near Eastern cultures, such as the Assyrians and the Babylonians, also adopted and adapted Egyptian customs and traditions. But the Israelites seem to have been particularly receptive to Egyptian ideas, perhaps because they lived in close proximity to Egypt and because they had regular contact with Egyptians through trade and diplomacy. So the evidence for Egyptian influence on the Torah is clear. But why should we care? What does it mean for our understanding of early Israel's foundational stories? Well, it means that we need to be careful not to read modern ideas and expectations into ancient texts. We also need to recognize that the ancient world was much more complex than we often imagine. Ancient cultures weren't isolated and they weren't static. They were constantly interacting with each other and evolving over time. So, when we study the Torah, we need to keep in mind the historical and cultural context in which it was written. We also need to recognize that the Torah isn't the only source of information about ancient Israel. Archaeological evidence can provide valuable insights into the customs, beliefs, and practices of ancient Israel, and it can help us better understand the cultural world in which the Torah was written. For example, archaeological discoveries in Egypt have revealed many parallels to the stories and traditions found in the Torah. For example, the discovery of the Tel Dan stele, which contains the first extra-biblical reference to the house of David, has provided strong support for the historicity of David's reign. Discoveries like these help us to piece together the history of ancient Israel, and they shed light on the cultural world in which the Torah was written. And finally, we need to remember that the Torah was written in Hebrew, a language that was closely related to Egyptian. And it's possible that this linguistic connection may have contributed to the similarities between the two cultures. In conclusion, ancient Egypt had a significant influence on the religious beliefs and practices of early Israel. This influence is evident in the similarities between the 42 negative confessions and the 10 commandments, and it reflects the broader cultural exchange that took place in the ancient Near East. While the Torah contains many Egyptian parallels, it's important to remember that the Israelites also drew from other cultures and traditions. The story of creation in Genesis, for example, has similarities to the Babylonian Enuma Elish, suggesting that the Israelites were familiar with other creation accounts. Similarly, the story of the flood in Genesis has parallels to the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, indicating that the Israelites were aware of other flood narratives. This suggests that the Israelites were not isolated and that they engaged with other cultures in their environment, adapting and synthesizing different traditions to fit within their own religious framework. As we continue to explore the origins of the Torah, it's important to keep in mind the broader cultural context and to recognize the similarities and differences between ancient Israel and its neighbors. By doing so, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the complexity of the ancient world and the richness of the Torah's cultural heritage. It is an epic tale that has resonated through the millennia. A people enslaved in a foreign land cry out for freedom. God intervenes, parts the sea, and allows them to escape their oppressors. It's a great story, but why? Why did the Israelites have to be freed from slavery in Egypt? What was it about Egypt that made this story so necessary to the Hebrews? And how do we know that it even happened? This is part 3 of our series on the Old Testament. We are going to look at the book of Exodus. Exodus tells the story of Israel's exodus out of Egypt. To really understand this story, you need to understand Egypt. Imagine if the United States had never left Britain or Brazil had never left Portugal. We know that slaves were taken from Africa to North America. In fact, many of us are descendants of those very slaves. But what if there had been no transatlantic accent? Would American culture be the same? What if there had been no African accent? Would African Americans be the same? The answer is no. Slavery is wrong, obviously, but the experience of slavery changes a person. It changes a community, it changes a culture. Some scholars think that the story of the Exodus may have been a way for the Hebrews to understand their enslavement in Egypt. You see, the Hebrews weren't the first people to live in Egypt. As early as 4000 BCE, people were living along the Nile River, and eventually they developed into the Egyptian civilization. The Egyptians would have seen themselves as gods on earth. Their pharaohs were divine kings, and the land of Egypt belonged to them by the will of the gods. If someone else wanted to live in Egypt, they were expected to pay tribute to the pharaoh and acknowledge his divinity. Sometimes the people who lived in Egypt came from the east across the desert. They were nomads who had to cooperate in order to survive. They were strangers in a strange land, and so they bowed before the pharaoh and gave him gifts. Over time, these foreigners became known as the Hebrews. In ancient Egyptian, the word for Hebrew was neither positive nor negative. It just meant wanderer. But the Hebrew name itself is a good clue as to where this story is going. The Hebrew Bible says that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were called to go to Egypt because there was a famine in Canaan, which is today Israel. They didn't stay long, though, because after a while Jacob's son Joseph became powerful in Egypt, and then the family moved there permanently. So the Hebrews settled in Egypt around 1650 BC. But they didn't become slaves until 1290 BC, when Ramesses II came to power. Now, according to the Bible, the Hebrews were enslaved and mistreated, but it was during this time that Moses was born. Moses was raised in the Pharaoh's palace, and he knew all the wisdom of the Egyptians. But one day, Moses saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, and he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day, the Pharaoh found out about it, and he got really angry because Moses had broken Egyptian law. Moses thought that the Hebrews would understand, but they didn't. They were afraid of the Pharaoh and didn't want any trouble. So Moses fled to Midian, and that's where he received the 10 Commandments. And now we come to the best-known part of the Exodus story, the plagues. There were 10 plagues sent by God to convince the Pharaoh to let the Hebrews go. Some of the plagues were pretty creative, like turning water into blood, sending hordes of frogs, locusts, and flies and boils. Other plagues were more mysterious, like the death of the firstborn. Each plague was worse than the last, and the purpose was clear: let the Hebrews go. But the Pharaoh refused again and again and again. That is until the 10th plague, when every firstborn son in Egypt died. The Pharaoh finally agreed to release the Hebrews, but then he changed his mind and sent his army after them. And that's when God parted the Red Sea, allowing the Hebrews to cross over. Then when the Pharaoh's army tried to follow, God sent a strong wind that pushed the water back into the sea and drowned them all. That's the story, but is there any truth to it? Well, not much. First of all, the Israelites weren't exactly slaves, more like seasonal workers. Second, the plagues were probably just bad cases of malaria. And third, there's no mention of the Exodus in Egyptian records. It's like it never happened. Now, some scholars argue that the Exodus is based on a real event, a mass migration that occurred around 1200 BC when the Egyptians were invaded by the Hittites and the Kassites. But that's just speculation. What we do know is that the story of the Exodus played a huge role in the development of Judaism. After being freed from slavery, the Hebrews made their way to Mount Sinai, where they received the 10 Commandments. Then they traveled to Canaan, where they took over the land and established their kingdom. The story of the Exodus was a foundational moment in Jewish history. It told them who they were, where they came from, and it gave them hope for the future. If God could free them from slavery, then he could deliver them from any situation. But the story of the Exodus wasn't just about slavery, it was also about sin. In Exodus chapter 20, Moses climbed Mount Sinai to receive the 10 Commandments. As he was gone, the Hebrews began to worship a golden calf that they had made. When Moses came down the mountain, he was furious. He smashed the stone tablets containing the 10 Commandments and reminded the Hebrews that only one God was worthy of their worship. This is an important story because it shows that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was a jealous God. He demanded exclusive devotion and would punish anyone who worshipped other gods. So the story of the Exodus tells us two things about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Number one, he delivered his people from oppression. And number two, he demands exclusive devotion. Both of these themes are repeated throughout the Old Testament. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is a warrior king. He fights his enemies and punishes the wicked, but he also forgives the repentant and blesses those who love him. In fact, one of the main characters in the Old Testament is a descendant of Abraham named Ruth. Let's take a look. Ruth was a Moabite woman who married an Israelite man named Salmon. Their son was Boaz, and their grandson was King David. The story of Ruth is important because it shows that God's promises aren't limited to the Jews. In fact, God promised that all nations will be blessed through Abraham's offspring. And later, we'll see that one of Abraham's offspring is none other than Jesus Christ himself. So what can we learn from the book of Exodus? For starters, God is a liberator. He fights for the oppressed and delivers those who are enslaved. Secondly, God demands exclusive devotion. He wants us to trust him and obey his laws. Finally, God's promises extend beyond ethnic boundaries. Anyone can put their faith in Jesus Christ and be saved. One of the most famous parts of the book of Exodus is the 10 Commandments. These 10 statements summarize the most important aspects of the law and show us how to live a godly life. Here they are. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, and you shall not covet. The 10 Commandments tell us what God expects from his people. They are to worship him alone, not make idols, not misuse his name, to keep the Sabbath holy, to honor their parents, not murder, not commit adultery, not steal, not lie, and not covet. The 10 Commandments are still important today. They show us what it means to live a life pleasing to God. From the banks of the Nile to the hills of Judea, we're going to embark on an extraordinary journey through time. Get ready to explore the profound connections that intertwine the ancient Egyptians with the Jewish people. Hey there, it's me, your guide to the secrets of the past. Today we're diving into the captivating echoes of tradition. Prepare to be amazed by the shared beliefs, rituals, and stories that paint a vivid picture of the enduring legacy of ancient Egypt on Jewish tradition. Let's get started. Before we dive into the fascinating parallels between ancient Egypt and Judaism, let's quickly talk about something super exciting. Are you ready to win some cool prizes? All you have to do is click that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment below with your thoughts on the connections between ancient Egypt and Judaism. The world of ancient Egypt is filled with mystery and intrigue, from their magnificent pyramids to their fascinating religious beliefs. But did you know that there are intriguing similarities between ancient Egyptian traditions and Judaism? Yes, that's right. As we delve deeper into this captivating topic, prepare to be amazed by the unexpected connections that bind these two ancient civilizations. One of the most striking parallels between ancient Egypt and Judaism lies in their shared emphasis on ritual and sacrifice. Both cultures placed great importance on following established customs and ceremonies, which were seen as essential to maintaining order and harmony in their societies. In ancient Egypt, rituals were performed daily in the temples and homes to honor the gods and ensure their continued blessings. Priests played a vital role in maintaining these rituals, which often involved offerings of food, drink, and incense. Similarly, Judaism, with its rich tapestry of holidays and rituals, places great importance on following the Torah's dietary laws, observing festivals and performing religious duties. The concept of sacrifice is another significant parallel between these two cultures. Ancient Egyptians practiced animal sacrifices as a way of appeasing the gods and seeking their favor. They believed that by offering the firstborn animals to the divine, they could demonstrate their devotion and receive blessings in return. This concept of sacrifice is also deeply ingrained in Judaism, as the Hebrew Bible contains numerous accounts of animal sacrifices being offered at the temple in Jerusalem. The sacrificial system in ancient Egypt and Judaism serves as a powerful reminder of the shared importance placed on maintaining a connection with the divine through ritual and ceremony. Both ancient Egypt and Judaism share a reverence for the afterlife, which is reflected in their beliefs and practices surrounding death and burial. Ancient Egyptians held elaborate burial rituals and believed that the deceased would continue to exist in the afterlife. They mummified their dead and placed them in tombs filled with treasures, ensuring their comfort and well-being in the next world. Similarly, Judaism has strong beliefs about the afterlife, with the concept of resurrection being a central tenet of faith. The Jewish practice of burying the dead with a certain orientation or placing stones on graves reflects their deep respect for the deceased and their hope for their eventual return. This shared focus on the afterlife reveals a common thread of continuity between ancient Egyptian and Jewish traditions, emphasizing the significance of death and the possibility of existence beyond the physical realm. One of the most compelling aspects of ancient Egyptian culture is their rich mythology, which offers intriguing parallels with elements found in Jewish tradition. For instance, the Egyptian god Osiris, who represents fertility in the underworld, shares similarities with the Hebrew Bible's account of the fall of man. Both stories involve themes of knowledge, temptation, and the consequences of disobedience. Additionally, the Egyptian myth of Isis and Osiris, where Isis, the wife of Osiris, resurrects him to conceive Horus, mirrors certain aspects of the Passover story, where the Israelites' faith in God leads to the liberation from slavery. These parallels between Egyptian mythology and Jewish narratives raise questions about possible influences and shared cultural threads that connected these two ancient civilizations. Ancient Egypt and Judaism also share intriguing parallels in their respective creation accounts, offering a glimpse into their beliefs about the origins of the world. The Egyptian creation myth describes the emergence of the universe from a primordial ocean, with the sun god Ra playing a central role in bringing light and order to the world. This narrative emphasizes the importance of the sun and its life-giving power, a theme that resonates with certain aspects of the Jewish creation account in Genesis. Both accounts share common elements, such as the idea of a divine being creating the world and humanity's place within it. However, there are also distinct differences, particularly in the roles of the creators and the emphasis on different natural phenomena. The Egyptian creation narrative highlights the sun's significance, while the Jewish account focuses on divine command and the act of creation through speech. These parallels and differences in the creation accounts reflect the unique beliefs and perspectives of each culture, while also pointing to potential shared influences or independent development of similar ideas. The Book of Exodus, a central text in the Hebrew Bible, contains stories of plagues, the parting of the Red Sea, and the giving of the Ten Commandments. These narratives, known as the Exodus story, have had a profound impact on Jewish identity and tradition. Interestingly, there are some parallels between certain elements of the Exodus story and ancient Egyptian history and culture. For example, the plagues described in the Book of Exodus, such as the Nile turning to blood or the infestation of frogs, bear some resemblance to real-world events that occurred during the reign of Pharaoh Ramses II. Some scholars have suggested that these similarities may have been influenced by Egyptian mythology and folklore. Additionally, the story of the Exodus itself, which tells of the Israelites' escape from slavery in Egypt, has been linked to historical events during the Late Bronze Age, when the Egyptian Empire was in decline and there was increased instability in the region. While the historicity of these connections is debated among scholars, they offer intriguing insights into the potential influences that shaped the Exodus story and its portrayal of ancient Egypt. Let's take a moment to appreciate the intricate design and symbolism embedded within the Great Pyramid of Giza. Standing as an enduring testament to ancient Egyptian ingenuity, this colossal structure offers more than just an awe-inspiring marvel of engineering. The alignment of the pyramid's axes with the cardinal points of the compass, combined with its internal passages and chambers, has led some to speculate about potential astronomical and symbolic significance. Some believe that the pyramid's design incorporated astronomical alignments, reflecting the ancient Egyptians' deep connection to the cosmos. Others have noted the symbolic representation of various deities and concepts within the pyramid's architecture. While interpretations may vary, the Great Pyramid of Giza continues to captivate the imagination and inspire wonder about the mysteries of ancient Egypt. Another remarkable site closely linked to ancient Egyptian culture is the Temple of Karnak. Located in Luxor, this sprawling temple complex served as a hub for religious activity and commemorated various pharaohs and gods. The Temple of Karnak's intricate carvings and colossal statues, including the iconic Red Chapel, stand as a testament to the artistic skill and devotion of the ancient Egyptians. The temple's vast hypostyle hall, supported by towering columns adorned with intricate reliefs, is a marvel of ancient architecture. Exploring the Temple of Karnak offers a glimpse into the religious beliefs, power and artistry of ancient Egyptian civilization. Our journey through the connections between ancient Egypt and Judaism wouldn't be complete without mentioning one of the most iconic artifacts associated with ancient Egyptian culture, the Rosetta Stone. Discovered in 1799, this stone slab inscribed with hieroglyphic, Demotic and Greek texts played a pivotal role in deciphering ancient Egyptian writing. The Rosetta Stone provided the key to understanding a vast array of ancient Egyptian texts, including the famous Book of the Dead, which contains funerary texts and spells. By unlocking the secrets of hieroglyphics, the Rosetta Stone revolutionized our understanding of ancient Egyptian culture, history, and religion. Its discovery opened up new avenues of research and continues to be a monumental achievement in the field of Egyptology. Jewish tradition holds immense importance for the Jewish people, shaping their identity, beliefs, and practices. At the heart of Jewish tradition lies the Torah, which contains the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible and is considered the foundation of Jewish law and teachings. The Torah's narratives, including the creation account, the stories of the patriarchs and the exodus from Egypt, have profoundly influenced Jewish theology and ethics. Observance of Jewish law, known as halakha, encompasses dietary laws, rituals, and ethical guidelines that govern various aspects of Jewish life. Holidays such as Passover, Shavuot, and Rosh Hashanah commemorate significant events in Jewish history and provide opportunities for spiritual reflection and community. The Jewish tradition of storytelling, known as Agada, has played a vital role in transmitting moral teachings, historical accounts, and mystical narratives. Through oral and written traditions, Jewish wisdom has been passed down through generations, shaping Jewish identity and values. As we bring our journey to a close, it's important to acknowledge the enduring legacy of ancient Egypt on Jewish tradition. From the shared emphasis on ritual and sacrifice to the parallels in their creation accounts and mythology, the connections between these two ancient civilizations are truly remarkable. While the exact nature and extent of these connections continue to be debated among scholars, one thing is clear: the legacy of ancient Egypt has left an indelible mark on Jewish history and culture. Whether it was through direct interaction, cultural exchange, or shared beliefs, the influence of ancient Egypt can be seen throughout Jewish tradition. As we reflect on the echoes of tradition between ancient Egypt and Judaism, we are reminded of the interconnectedness of human history and the profound ways in which different cultures have shaped each other's beliefs and practices. All right, history buffs, it's time to test your knowledge. How many of these fascinating connections did you already know? Leave your answers in the comments section below and let us know what surprised you the most. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this journey through time. Thanks for joining us on this eye-opening adventure, and remember to stay tuned for more thrilling journeys into the past. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop discovering.